Now, let me introduce you to the host today, Mark. Mark Burns is our head of relationships here at Land Services SA. He's been here for over 3 years, so understands our data and our platforms inside out. But in a previous life, Mark was the principal of a real estate agency for almost 20 years, and so really understands that part of the industry well as well. So without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Rob. I'm just going to share my screen with everybody. Perfect. So guys, welcome. As Rob said, this is not meant to be an exhaustive example of what Property Edge can do, but give you a bit of an overview. So as you actually do log in via Salus into Property Edge, you always come to this screen. And that actually sets up what sets this particular program apart from those that you may be used to. You can see here on the right-hand side, we have a button and you can alternate between two databases. So we have a sales database, which is fairly self-explanatory. That covers every sale of a CT in South Australia back to 1993. So if there's been multiple sales of a property, they'll all be covered off there. The second one, though, is a really interesting one, and it's a real-time database. That actually covers every CT in South Australia, regardless of whether it's sold or not. So many of you who are real estate agents or valuers would have had the example where you go to search a property in an existing platform and you come up with crickets. Because the property's never sold, that platform doesn't have any information on it. That's where you jump into your real-time database, and that will give you information on every property that we've been able to collect, still on the work that we do on behalf of the state government, particularly our valuation team. So let's give you an example of that. So if I'm in the database, sales database, and I'm trying to search a particular property, and in this case, it's one in Lockleys. So if I'm looking for 1 Callett Avenue in Lockleys, nothing comes up. That property actually hasn't transacted in that period of time. If, however, I jump into the real-time database and I look for exactly the same property, we're going to find some details about that particular property. So you can see here, your default is always a split view. You have your map on your right, your data on your left. You can maximize or minimize either of those sides of the screen. And when you've got that split, whatever property you're hovering over will highlight on the left. Clearly, this is only one property, so you don't have too many to choose from. And vice versa, when you've got a lot of properties on the left-hand side, lots of properties on the map, you'll be able to see the property quite quickly as you hover over the information. So if we just have a quick look here, we're about to go and appraise this property, potentially for a sale or a rental, or indeed about to value the property. We're not going in blind now. So before we've purchased any products to understand what the CT is, we know the site area, the building area, the year of the build. They're the usual 3 basics that you start with when you're looking at homes. And it does actually come across, gives you the improvements that we know about, gives you your zonings, but most importantly, it actually does give you a CT as well. But what we can also do is hover over the property, click on the button, and it brings the property up in more detail. So once again, there's no live data here. So in terms of sales data or listing data, so nothing's coming up here except for the property itself and what we've got. You can alternate between map view and satellite, and you can highlight or shade or outline it. On the left-hand side, it will tell you what the property is. There's no history here in terms of sold, listed for sale, or listed for rent, so that's why that's blank. Interestingly, now we've actually zoned every, we've tagged every home in South Australia to where their both primary and secondary school zonings are. You can also just search for school zonings. So for those who know Adelaide well, you might have something in the Glenunga zone, Unley High, Botanic High, Adelaide High. You can actually heat map every CT that fits into those zonings. And as we go a little bit further down on the left-hand side, a really nice feature here is you can actually go in here and ascertain exactly the legal description and titles of the property quickly. This is a single property, so it's pretty straightforward. But for those rural agents or rural valuers, you well know that often you have multiple title numbers on a property. All of them will be listed here under the parent. And even if that's not the case, you'll often either have multiple allotments. All of those will be also listed. So from this pane here, we can do a couple of things. We're about to go and appraise a property. You can actually order any of these products, which are titling products, direct from Property Edge. You don't need to go back into Salus. The one I want to highlight today for you is this one here. It's a brand new product. It's called Owner Validation. It's only available in Property Edge. And you can actually see an example of that here. Just wait for that to open up. For $5, that gets you an owner validation product. It gives you the property location, the title reference. Most importantly, it actually gives you the address for notices. So for those of you who work in properties with absentee owners, that one's an absolute game changer. Most importantly, it confirms who the registered owners are of the property, and it gives you the legal description of the land. So you can imagine if you're about to go and appraise a property, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the people who have asked for the appraisal are the legal entities. You also want to make sure the decision makers are there at your meeting, obviously. Assuming you can assumptive close that on the spot, be it a rental appraisal or a sales appraisal, there's enough information in this document for $5 to actually fill out a sales agency or a rental management agreement. So let's just go back to where we were. So from here, you can actually download that, add it to your cart and download, and that speaks straight to your Salus account. And I might actually just show you one other feature quickly we have in here. As we go to the cart, you can see here, I've got the product that I want. I can highlight that. If the business trusted me a bit more, they would have given me some credit and I could show you how to download. But you can see here I've got $0 credits, hence the reason we're in red. Assuming that was more than zero, this wouldn't be in red. The piece I wanted to show you here was we've put a customer reference button here for you, or an area you can fill in. So if you were doing a valuation project and you wanted to attribute this to a cost center, you could pop that there. If you're in an agency, a residential real estate agency, and the owner or the admin team insisted that you identified every product that you purchased so that it could come back to you, or however it's done, you can put your little details here as well. So there's one other thing we can do as we go back. From here, we can actually also do a CMA. So you can see this button here, created an appraisal. I can either create a sales appraisal or a rental appraisal. So as I click on sales appraisal, whilst we don't have any photos of the property because there's no live on market photos, what we do have is a high res aerial shot. What you can also do is white label this. So you can put in your own company logo and pop that up the top of the page. Individual agents obviously can do their own symbols there as well. So if you had something that stood you out from anybody else, you could also put that in that area. You'll find here the details of the property. Remembering this is a property that's never sold before. So if you're in any other program, all of these are going to come up blank. You can turn any of those on or off. Just make note here that we actually have the school zonings here. We also have a heritage indicator. No sales history, so nothing's going to show up here, but what we do have is your comparable sales. So it does self-generate some of those comparable sales. But if I wanted to add more, I simply push this button. I can actually put in a very specific property and its address if I know the address of the property, or I can simply find more properties. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change this to a 2 kilometre range, just the suburb itself, target suburb. And we're only interested in sales in the last 3 months. And on top of that, I actually just want homes. Just want homes that are sitting on a lot size of 500 to 1,000 square metres. So you can see here on the left-hand side, it's brought up quite a few properties, and you'll be able to decide whether they suit or not. Now, clearly this one, built in 2012, is probably not a direct comparison to the one we wanted, so we can simply delete that property. At any time, we can put those back in. But the other one I wanted to show you here was that I saw it before, this one here. So what we've also added to Property Edge is $0 sales. I know it's a bane of property professionals' existence where refer to agent often comes up, or there's a $0 sale. Where that's the case, we're actually giving you what's called the stamped value. So in this particular case, for whatever reason, that property was settled with a $0 sale by the conveyancer, usually on the behest of either the purchaser or the vendor, usually the vendor. What we do, though, is we collect the stamped value, and it's that value we report back to Revenue SA on, and that's what they work out stamp duty. Now, I would argue there's a pretty good chance, and there's another way we can find this out, which I'll show you later, but I would argue that's probably an on-market sale, and that is likely to be the actual sale price in reality. The beauty is you can add those in or you can take them out, and if you add them in, you can make a note on your appraisal form to show that that's what that is. So as we go back, assuming these are the properties that we're specifically looking for, you can also alter these into the order that you want to change your narrative. So you can put those into any order that you wish. You can also order them. At the moment, these are ordered as distance from target. You can also go high to low price, low to high, or most recents. Exactly what we've done there, we can do with comparable listings. So the first one was what's actually sold. The second one is what's on the market. We give you the map as well, but we also give you exactly the same parameters. So in what's on the market, you can go back in exactly what I did before and actually make sure the narrative that you're giving your potential owner or potential client is what you want to say. As you hover, you will get the on-market information from these as well. As we move a little bit down, we do put statistics in. So for those who like their statistics, you can include or exclude. And then at the bottom of the page, that's it. What we've done here is we've put no parameters in as templates. You can quite literally put in your own narrative. If you did have a narrative that you used in your appraisals or valuation documents every time, you could copy and paste that in here, and so that you only have to change a few words each time, and simply then save the document as your template. Now, every time you open up, whilst the property itself will be different, this will actually remain exactly the same. You only have to change a few words. So from there, once we're all set, we simply generate an appraisal. And I won't go through that at the moment for a lack of time, but it's as simple as that. At any time then, you can go back into appraisals. Your appraisal is saved. You have all of your appraisals listed. You can edit those and you can also delete them. So you can see here, the majority of these ones are sales, but there'll be a rental in there. So there's a rental appraisal. So you have a list of those at any one time, alternating between the two or seeing all of them. So some of the other things that we can do from this point of view is a little bit of research on a suburb. So let's just assume Lockleys is our area of interest. I can search all of Lockleys. I could do multiple suburbs, but in this case, we're just going to do Lockleys. And I'm really interested to know how many residential houses there are. Just interested in houses at the moment, but I could do townhouses and apartments or combinations of. And I specialise in this area, and I know the majority of them are Torrens title. So I'm not interested in community. I just want Torrens title properties. So on the left-hand side, you can see it's picked up 2,043 records. We can only show you 500 results at a time. And to that point, as I click on that property there, you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see that highlights, and you'll see the little yellow dot as that highlights as I move over properties. So that's actually quite an interesting little exercise in itself to get that macro, but I actually specialise just in this particular area of Lockleys. So what I can do there is I'm just interested just around on the edge of the golf course and inside that boundary. So in that little area there, I've identified 354 properties. If I quickly just go back into this area here, I just want to actually reiterate again that it's just residential that I'm after. It's just a house. And I'm going to leave that for the moment and let's see what comes up. So that straight away, that takes out any of the reserves that it was picking up. And in that little segment there, I've actually got a really neat little heat map of every CT. So you can see here, as we go down, this is picking up every property. And you can see it's picking up the properties that have never transacted. It also is picking up any properties that may have transacted, but since their transaction, they've changed their parameters. So some of these may have sold originally as blocks of land, but since that time, they may never have transacted again, but a house has been built. So this database now shows you that it's not a block of land, it's actually a block of land of a certain size, but with a house of 350 square metres or 150 square metres or whatever the case is, it actually shows you what's there. There's one other feature I'd like to show you here though. I'm really interested to know in this little cohort of properties here, how many are rental properties? So I literally have just given you a heat map in that little quadrant that we've drawn of 48 potential rental properties. The way we calculate that is grabbing the address of the property. We match that up in the background for the address of notices, and where those are different, we highlight those properties. We do take out properties with PO boxes in the area because often that is not an absentee property. So whilst we can't guarantee 100% accuracy that it's a rental property, we believe within parameters of a particular search we're anywhere between 85 and 95% accurate. And remember too, this is quite a residential area. So I would argue in this particular case, we actually have identified rental properties. If this was Port Elliot, for instance, what we probably in that circumstance have done is identified a combination of absentee owner properties, and they may be permanent rentals, holiday houses, or Airbnbs. Out of interest, if you wanted to actually find out anything further about those properties, you can do an order. So where I was looking at before, if I go back to order products, you can see here I've highlighted all of those products. It may be that I wanted to do a mass historical search. I could actually do that, and I can order. In this case, I'm ordering 25 historical searches in one foul swoop. I don't have to go back and do property by property. I can actually do that and just simply add it to my cart and do one download. And we're going for time. So the other thing I'm going to show you just before we go to some questions is I showed you that from a real-time perspective. Let's now do a sales perspective. So apply changes. We're going to do, I'll do a different search in this case, and it's going to be a radius search. We're going to use 1 Callett Avenue in Lockleys again. We can search up to 500 kilometres for those who work in rural areas, but we're just going to keep it to 2 kilometres. And we're looking for all residential. And once again, we just want houses. And we want to see all of the properties that sold in the last 6 months. The reason I've done this, I didn't tick the button for just that suburb, so my apologies. That was a user error. The reason I've done this is actually to show you this feature here. So any of these columns can be sorted ascending or descending. You can also customize what you're actually looking for. So in this case, we're looking at a default of residential, but if I wanted to add any of these into what I was looking for, I can do so. A lot of people like to put their dealing numbers in, but you can put any of these in or indeed take any of these out. When you do that, you can save your view and that becomes your custom view. So each time you search, if it's in a particular way, you can actually just come in and use your custom search. But in this case, we're going to keep it exactly as it is. If the columns aren't in the order that you wish, you can change that. And the reason that is important is if you wanted to upload any of these into your CRMs that you use in the office, you can actually get this to look exactly as you want and exactly into the columns and the order that they need to be for your CRM, because from here, you can also then export that as a PDF or as an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV file. And if you do that as a CSV file, you can upload that straight into your CRM program. But you'll notice here that we've got a truckload of $0 sales. And by way of explanation, as we come across, you'll see that the stamp values are on the right-hand side. So in some of these, they're going to be very, very legitimate. In others, such as this one here, or this may, and it's been to a proprietary limited, so you get that number there. This may actually be quite valid because it's actually, I would argue, it's actually over 2 properties. So that's quite a valid one. You can see here, once again, your capital value is $880, the $0 sale was there, and the stamp fee was $890. So clearly not an on-market sale. So most of these are appearing to be quite legitimate. And have I got one that's not? Yes, I do. No, that's going to be the same property again. And this one's probably the best example. So as we look at this one here, 23 Huntington Avenue in Fulham Gardens, I would argue that there indicates, with such a stamp value in excess of the capital value, I would argue that was actually an on-market sale. For whatever reason, they wanted it not disclosed. Well, in effect, we've just disclosed what that sale price was. So if your subset of searches didn't bring up too many searches and there was quite a few of them with $0, this is particularly important for rural areas and valuers where they actually need a subset to do a proper appraisal or indeed a legal valuation. We've put this figure in here, which gives you a little bit of a hand to understand where those figures come from. So Rob, I think that probably is about the timeline you were looking for. So do you have anything that you'd like to get me to show via questions?
I do indeed. A couple have come through actually as direct messages to me.
Yep.
If the address isn't showing up and I don't have the CT, how do I find the property?
Yep, great one. So let's just change the address. So we've got the map view here, and I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I know this example quite well. So I'm an Adelaide agent. I'm working in the city, and I can do one of 2 things. I can use this to draw around the property itself, or I can actually highlight the property. In this case, I'm not sure what unit number it is, but I know it's in the Sofitel building. And in one foul swoop, I've actually just, without knowing what the actual address is, I've been able to bring up all of the apartments in the Sofitel building. And you will see here as I'm highlighting, you're getting both the apartment and in this case, the allocated car park. So as we go down, once again, from here, I could go in and filter and change that filter so it was just residential that I was looking for, or indeed, I know it's apartment X on level something or other. So that's a really neat one for apartments where sometimes they're called units, sometimes they're called apartments. They're never gazetted in quite the same way. So unless you have the exact right wording, it can be hard to find in the search. So you can do it this way quite easily. The other way you can do that is, as I search for a property, if you don't have the address, or indeed the address you have and you put in isn't showing up and it's not the one that we have as a gazetted address, you can also put in the CT, or you can also search by a valuation number. So there's a few ways to do that. And indeed, if I go back, none of those were actually the ones that I was after. I was actually after that one there. I can actually just do that and it'll pick up that particular property. So there's a myriad of ways we can actually find a property when we actually don't know the physical address itself, or indeed the address we've been given is what the owner believes it to be, but it's not the gazetted address.
Magic, another question sent to me has been, does it show capital value?
Yeah, so the platform itself will actually always show you CV on sale. So the CV will always show up on sale. So that's always there. Your current capital value, though, the only way we can do that, and we would have loved to have put it in here, the only way we can do that is via going back via a regulated product. So if you're up for your latest capital value, so your last CV, exactly as you do with any other program, you need to go back and get that titling product, and that's one of the ones provided by the state government. You can do that straight. You can do that straight out of the platform, obviously.
One last one. How do I get statistics about a suburb out of Property Edge?
Yep. So couple of ways
Let's
you can
make this the last question, Mark.
Yep, a couple of ways you can do that. So the easiest way you could do that, and by that, Rob, are they talking about number of properties or number of sales, or exactly what are they looking for in the statistics? Were they prescriptive to that?
No, not really. I think they're looking for maybe average and median sort of prices.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, if I had a let's just use this. It's a poor example, but just let's use this for the moment. I've got two examples here now, the same property, but if I had 50 here from my search, I simply go in and I can actually push this little button here. It's showing number of sales is 2. It gives me my average price per square metre of site area and building area. Now, clearly in this case, it's the same property. So the statistics don't make sense. But if the subset was 15 different properties in a subset that made sense to me, I can then actually also get, so if I'd looked up Lockleys again and I'd looked up all the sales in the last 6 months, this would give me exactly the minimums and maximums on sales. The minimums, you can actually take out the $0, but even if you don't, the stamp value will be taken into consideration. It then gives you your site areas and your building areas, and you can download that as a PDF as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that might be the end of this. Mark, thank you for your time, and thanks to all the viewers. I know your time is precious, so thank you for spending half an hour with us. I really hope that you found value out of today's presentation. We will upload it onto our website if you want to return to it in the future. And on a note on that, on the Property Edge website, we have a pretty comprehensive support section, and we're constantly adding to it. So if you ever need any help with Property Edge, head over to propertyedge.app/support, and you'll find all your answers there. Thank you from us, and have a lovely weekend.
See you later, guys.